Hi guys, it's Jeff here, the photographer's mentor, and welcome to another LinkedIn Live. And in this LinkedIn Live, I'm joined by the fantastic photographer, photography educator, and Sigma ambassador, Anabel DeFlux. We just had a little bit of a hitch there with the time differences, because obviously here in the UK, the clocks changed at the weekend, and I think we've worked our timings out wrong. So Anabel was actually expecting it in an hour's time. So she's very kindly jumped straight in. It's quite early there in the morning for her as she's over in the US. So today we're going to be talking about growing your photography brand, becoming more visible, because that's really, really important. And if anybody is a bit of an expert on visibility, it is Anabel, because she has a huge following. She's an ambassador, so she needs to get herself out there. She needs to be seen. She gets in front of lots of people, and she seeks out lots of opportunity. Her business has been built on opportunity by reaching out and making sure she's in the right place at the right time, getting herself visible and getting herself among the people who make decisions. And this is something you need to be doing. So I'm going to bring Anabel in, and then we're going to have a sort of an unscripted chat talking about how you can build your business, how you can build your brand, how it's really important to get yourself more visible, get yourself seen, and get yourself out there. Because let's face it, everyone starts with one follower. Even the big influencers, they start with one follower and they start with their one post. But it's their ability to keep up the consistency, keep posting, keep getting the message out there, that lets them grow. And they end up in people's news feeds, and the more they become visible, the more they become credible, and the more authority they grow. And you can do that too. So I'm just going to bring Anabel in.
Hi,
Anabel. How are you doing? You okay?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me again. I love chatting with you. You're awesome.
Thank you. And you've is that your parrot? Is it a parrot you've got in the background?
Yes, unfortunately, I was like, oh, yeah, our time. I'm so sorry about the time conversion. We were expecting an hour later, so I didn't even have time to put everybody away. So please don't mind a little bit of screeching here and there.
Fine.
But you know what? It helps with music photography, because I can certainly tell you I can't hear anything after having him for 18 years.
So you've built a fantastic photography brand, haven't you? And you've become very, very visible. You've got a huge following. You get a load of engagement on social media. Obviously, you're an ambassador for Sigma and an educator to other photographers. You travel across the states educating and helping photographers with the photography side of things, and also with the business and the visibility side of things. So brand is really important, isn't it? Because brand is what people think, feel, and believe about you and your business. And if you want people to think you're premium and you're high quality, you've got your brand, not just your photographs, your whole branding and your message and your story needs to be out there. It needs to be coming from a place of high end, premium. Look at me, I'm really good at what I do. You shouldn't be skimping on design and branding. You've got to create that right message, haven't you?
Absolutely. And the thing about branding is that really is what separates photographers from one another. Because if you really think about it, there are a lot of incredibly talented, skilled, and amazing photographers. But if their brand isn't kind of up there in line with a lot of the other successful photographers, they might be kind of swept in that whole sea of photography. I mean, the industry is quite large. There are a lot of photographers in our world. So you really do need to develop kind of a strong and recognizable brand in order to be able to kind of stand out from the crowd. And what I've always found really interesting, and this comes from my background actually with a passion for writing, and it's part of the reason that I write educational articles, is that I really do kind of have a fancy way of utilizing my words in written form. And it was great to align it with photography. But what I was kind of bringing that to is that your brand is so much more than your, I guess, visual image. It's so much more than the photographs of yourself, the photographs that you have in your portfolio, your business name. It's also how you talk, and it's also how you write. And every little intricate component that kind of makes you is a part of your brand. And which is why I kind of push that being true to who you are and your passions and your interests is probably the best way to run your brand, because then you won't have to sit here and try and kind of contrive yourself into something that you're not.
Yeah, so, and I think a lot of photographers now, and if anybody's watching this, if you want to comment in the chat, what is the hardest bit you find about branding? But I think a lot of photographers initially think, right, I've got my logo done. That's it. That's my brand. But your brand isn't your logo. It's, people from your logo, people can't determine what you do for them, what's special about you, what makes you stand out. They can't determine your personality. You can't tell you whether you're premium, you're high end, what sort of services you offer. And this all comes from your wording, and it's words that create desire. Pictures can create interest, and pictures can create emotion, and pictures can really stand out. But it's the words, and especially when it comes to social media, because I've noticed with photographers, they tend to go one way or the other. So they'll either do an image that will be just an image with a few hashtags, and that's it. Or they'll do an image and then they'll whack a sales post on the end of it, which sounds a little bit desperate. But one of the best ways to stand out on social media is to tell stories. People love stories. Who, what, where, when, why. Tell a story about the image.
Absolutely. And to go back to this earlier point, just on a fun fact, I actually do not have a logo. So I'm one of those brands that never actually designed a logo for myself. So it's totally possible to kind of find your voice in that industry in so many different ways. I do suggest making a logo. I am one of those educators who's like, do as I say, not as I do. But just on a funny note, I was like, I actually don't have a logo. But in the topic of storytelling is that, well, as photographers, even if you're someone who does product photography or someone who you feel just does, say, corporate headshots, you're still telling a story, whether you see it or not. Everything that we do as image makers, as visual creators, as creatives is telling a story. So I think that allowing the photograph story to kind of be the forefront of how you lead who you are as a photographer, what subjects you want to capture, and what kind of demographic you want to attract with your photography business is so important. I completely agree with the tell a story in your caption, tell a story in your post. It doesn't have to be a novel, because we all know that social media is kind of meant for instant gratification. So not that many people are really going to sit there and read an entire novel. But having just a few words of text about what the context of that image is becomes such a huge thing. I actually had a photo series go viral about a couple years ago, simply because of the story that actually was attached to the images themselves. We had a huge rage of wildfires in Southern California prior to my moving to Las Vegas. And during that time, I was working with a very close friend of mine who raises ambassador animals. She has wolf dogs that kind of educate the public on wolves, wolf dogs, and how we can kind of conserve our natural canids in the wild. And those animals have very specific needs. And one of those needs continues to be, regardless of what's happening in the world, they need to have their exercise and they need to be out on a walk, because that's just something that's mandatory for their physical well-being and their mental well-being. So despite the fact that California was on fire and our sky was just completely covered in brown smoke and ash, they still needed to go out for a walk. So I joined her on one of her trips with my camera, and I captured the setting sun with a lot of smoke and ash directly overhead, which created this really bizarre, incredible, and ominous kind of red glow going throughout the image. And I shared those images and kind of shared the story of, regardless of kind of what happens in the world, we find a way to overcome, because life has to continue to go on. As these animals have shown that, once more, they still need their walks, they still need their exercise. It's mandatory for them. And sharing that kind of story with those images really resonated with so many people on both a kind of metaphorical sense, as well as just a, wow, this is the most bizarre image we've ever seen.
And I think you're right, because people relate to stories, and people do take the time to read through. And I put a lot of content out there, and I do especially if I'm posting on LinkedIn, I do between sort of 1,000 and 1,400 characters. So it is fairly lengthy post, and I'm surprised how many people take the time to read through, because you can tell by their comments that they've actually read through. Now, if I didn't put all that there, they wouldn't have as much engagement in the comments, and it's engagement in comments that gets social media moving. But the other thing I think as a photographer is you got to think about who you're writing for, who you're creating so you're telling the story for your potential clients, for other clients. So if you have a client who's had a like a pet portrait shoot, tell a bit of a story about the animal. Who is he? How old is he? What's his favorite toy? Where did you go for the shoot? And why did the owner want these pictures? Because those sort of things are like emotional triggers where people say, oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, we could get some pictures for our living room wall, or, you know, to capture our first puppy or something like that. So when you tell a story, it becomes very relevant to the reader, as opposed to just putting up a picture, a load of hashtags, and you f-stop and you shutter speed, because that's more posting for other photographers as opposed to posting for your ideal client.
Absolutely. And I actually take a lot of example from the wedding photography industry, because that industry really is driven so heavily on story. Because what is wedding photography? It's capturing someone's romance. And oftentimes wedding photographers will go and shoot engagement sessions prior to the date, then they'll shoot the ceremony, they'll shoot the family, and kind of capture that entire really, really exciting time in someone's life. So if you watch the way that a lot of wedding photographers will present their photographs and present the blog posts and present the stories, I think we can all take a very, very big page out of their book on the way that they do that, because I think they do so much more than just essentially document an event. Like they truly create an entire fairy tale experience kind of over what they're capturing, because people who pay for wedding photographers want so much more than just documentation. If they wanted to just be documented with no kind of like artistic pizzazz behind it, they'd probably have a relative with a cell phone. But what they want is a love story captured.
Mm-hmm.
And we should apply that to other genres as well. I mean, when I photograph animals, I have the same thing. It's kind of like, this is kind of a love story. I mean, I'm a big animal lover. I know you're a big animal lover too. So we know about the love story between us and our animals. But as photographers, capturing those moments and kind of pushing those stories into that forefront really is such a big thing. And that's also what makes it sentimental for our clients.
Totally, and using the example of wedding photographers, obviously I've photographed over 700 odd weddings myself, so I was a wedding photographer for nearly 18 years. And a lot of brides would come to me, and I think they were maybe driven by a trigger on a post or something like that. And they come and they say, Jeff, I've seen a particular picture that you put out on Facebook. That's what drove us to inquire about your packages, because I want to make sure I get that particular image. So it might be a dad walking in the room and seeing her in her dress for the first time, and her dad starting to cry. Because what you got to think about when you're putting images up on social media, especially from like wedding point of view, or even portraits, people are buying into that emotional feeling. So a bride, if you put up this amazing, beautifully composed image, which is a couple against a sunset against a castle, a bride might look at it and go, yeah, that's okay. But if she sees a picture of the bride's father crying when she sees her in her dress, that's something she wants to happen on her day. She can relate to that, and that's how her fairy tale wedding, that is the way she wants it to be. So communicating what your ideal client's perfect outcome is a great way to sell the story.
Absolutely. And honestly, so much of it really is, once more pushing on the sentimental aspect of it, is that we want our clients, our potential clients, and our audience to feel something from our work. I mean, when I say that, it doesn't need to be this like overly deep, we're going to kind of go in really, really deep and find like every single little philosophical point in this image. It doesn't have to be that way, but it needs to initiate some sort of emotional response. Even, example, I also do music photography, and people might look at music photography and be like, well, at what story? Like, it's not a wedding. You're not capturing some sort of sentimental story. But the thing is, it is a sentimental story. It's a sentimental story for the audience who might be at that concert, and they're having a great time, and this band means something to them. And it's an incredibly sentimental story for the band themselves, because they're able to get on that stage and have all these adoring fans below them and have both of those dynamics documented. So you always have to think about it as really what is so kind of important in that image. And if you don't see it initially, just look a little bit into it and be like, that's what's important in that image. And that's why we need to share it. And that's why people are going to see it, and they're going to want it.
Funny enough, I've even had headshot photographers who've posted headshots, but as opposed to just saying great headshot, they'll tell a story about the person who's had the headshot and then how the headshot has improved their life. So one of my clients, Karen Richards from Nashville, I've seen her regularly put posts out about somebody who's had a headshot, and then because of that headshot, they've got a new job, or they've landed their dream job, or they've had this particular opportunity, or they've got this headshot because they're setting up their own business. Now, people reading that, again, that's a trigger for people thinking, hang on a minute, I'm setting my business up. Maybe I should get a headshot. Or, yeah, I might update my headshot because I'm looking for a new job, and, yeah, I want to look professional. So it's stuff like that does trigger people. And, it gives something for people to comment on.
Absolutely. And actually, funny enough, on the topic of headshots, photographers, get your headshots done. Get your branding images done. On just on a funny note, because as much as people are also relating to the images, I do know, especially in modern times, they also want to know who the photographer is. They want to be able to relate to the photographer. And that's also kind of where your ability to speak to people and your kind of customer service really comes into play, as well as kind of really pushing your personality forward through your brand, depending on what kind of a photographer you are. But people want to relate to you as much as they want to relate to the images. So being able to have both of those is kind of like a winning combination, because if you think about it, as photographers, we're very intimate with people. We're very emotionally intimate with people. We see people in their very raw form.
Yeah.
Because in a photo shoot, I feel like every photographer has had the same experience in a photo shoot. That's where your client's insecurities start to come out. That's where you might see a little bit of self-doubt. That's where you might see a little bit of kind of pure raw emotion. And as photographers, our job here is to be like, you know what? Don't worry about it. Your photos are going to be beautiful. You're going to feel really beautiful. And this is all so worth it. So being able to allow people to connect with you and kind of at an emotional level, especially through social media posts and interacting with your audience, is also such a big factor in kind of that entire equation.
Funny enough, I was talking about this yesterday on a webinar, and you think back like 10, 15 years ago, we all try to make ourselves bigger, and we use terminology like we and us, in our posts and in our websites and stuff. And now we're trying to make ourselves smaller by using the word, me, I, because people buy from people. People. For social media has created this need for everyone to have personal relationships with people. So they know, that people have their own sort of fitness instructor, and they have, their preferred barista when they go to a coffee shop and stuff like that. So everybody does business with people. The communities come closer together. And the other thing is big companies now are trying to be smaller. They're using individuals, they're using staff in their posts to add that human element, so they're not just a logo. So by being a photographer and putting yourself in front of the camera and getting yourself out there, so funny enough, some of the most engaging posts I've had have been actually pictures of myself. So get yourself out there, get yourself seen, because again, that's something a lot of photographers don't do, and people like to see the face behind the business.
Oh, and at times it's even more than just it's like they need to see the face in front of the business, because again, with social media, we are so incredibly connected with so many different people that all of a sudden our world went from being this big to this big, which meant that people really do want to know who you are, especially because the whole culture that kind of came out of the abundance of social media is that the veil is suddenly lifted off of who is behind this brand, who's behind this company. And you can see kind of across all boards. I guess my greatest example would also be music photography, where if you think about music, just as fans, not even as image creators or anything, think about music. Once upon a time, years ago, how much did you actually know about the musicians who were performing? They were kind of shrouded in mystery, because you knew the little snippets that they would put out there when they were on the stage, and that was about it. You really didn't know a whole lot. And now, if you look at where music is now, everyone has that personal relationship with the artist. The artists are sharing their personal thoughts on social media, and they're becoming a lot more, like you said, instead of it's we, the band, it's my role in that band, because each individual has their own brand. And I think if we kind of roll that over into photography, it turns into the same thing. Look at these like major photo studios, those big like chain photo studio companies, where once upon a time it was kind of, oh, it's just, this is the team, this is the company. Now it's become, no, this is the photographer, this is the editor, this is the gaffer, and everyone kind of has their own very individualized role within that company. And honestly, I think I love it. I think it's giving people kind of credit to what they do. They're no longer just a part of a unit in which everyone kind of doesn't necessarily have their own voice in it. Suddenly it's yeah, this is what I do and this is who I am. And you can kind of relate to me as a person who is skilled in this particular craft.
Yeah, and people, people suddenly start to understand what you're all about. And I was speaking at the Societies of Photographers convention 2 weeks ago down in London. So it was the biggest conference that we've had within the photography industry in Europe for about 2.5 years. So there's like thousands of people there, and it was surprised how many people came up to me who I didn't actually know at first until they'd introduced themselves and said where they knew me from. And they were like, "Oh, you're Jeff Brown, the Photographer's Mentor. I've seen you on LinkedIn." Now, because I put myself out there and I put my face out there, and then I would sit down and have a coffee with somebody, and they knew quite a bit about me. They knew what I talked about. They knew that I would help people I help people for free. I put advice out there because that's part of my brand. So I become, my brand is about being honest and being genuine and helping people. But obviously, yes, I still need to make a living and I still have paying clients. But I think that takes away the salesy side of things when you just be yourself, and you just be human.
Absolutely. And around the same time you were at that one, I was at WPPI in Las Vegas, which is the Wedding and Portrait Photographers conference in Las Vegas. And it was the same thing. It was people walking up to me and kind of just chatting with me because they knew me off of Instagram. They knew me off of Facebook. They knew me off of all the Sigma events. And I've always kind of, whenever I've done any of the educational events, especially when I've done educational workshop with Sigma, I always open myself up to, please, like, genuinely send me messages, ask me questions. I'm going to help in any way that I possibly can. I mean, of course, if the questions are kind of more time consuming or more intensive, it turns into it might be better suited if we do a private class, because I do also need to put food down on the table. But whenever people kind of share their images with me and they share their stories and they're asking for advice, I give kind of everyone who comes to my classes, a lot of the time I give them my phone number, because I'll get phone calls while they're at a shoot and they're like, I just walked away for like 15 minutes. I haven't, what would you do in this situation? Please help. And I'm more than happy to, because photography is also a community. I mean, part of the reason that I wanted to have kind of a visible brand and I wanted my face out there, and a huge, huge reason that I even wanted to pursue educational opportunities, is that when I was starting, and I started very young, I opened my photography business officially when I was 15 years old, but I had started photography a lot younger. This didn't really exist to this capacity. I mean, it was incredibly hard to find good education. It was incredibly hard to find people to talk to, especially at the age that I was in, because most of the photographers were, of course, significantly older than me. They were kind of looking at me like, what is this kid doing here? You should go home to your mom. And it was just really difficult. And I kind of vowed to myself in that very moment that I'm not going to be one of those photographers. I wanted to build a community and I wanted to try and help the people around us, because the beauty of just even the human species as a whole is that how we're so advanced and how we've gotten so far is that we are community species. We are very social. We share our ideas with each other so that we can both sides kind of excel in something, because we both shared opinions that the other one might not have had, or shared ideas that the other one might not have had, and it expanded us. So I kind of took this principle into photography, being like, I want to be visible because I want people to know that they're able to contact me and that they're able to reach out to me, and that I'm more than happy to help. Because honestly, I think for a very similar reason that you do what you do, when we see others successful, it also pushes us into success, and then everyone is successful because you surround yourself with the people that influence you into what you do.
And I think, that telling stories, letting people know who you are, opening up in front of the camera, putting yourself out there, even if you maybe do a bit of video if you want. I know a lot of people think it's a bit scary, but like Tom says, what, where, who, why, keep it simple. And when I was a Navy photographer and we did photographs for the Navy, and then we had to send off a press release, our chief would say, always go who, what, where, when, why, so that the picture desk editor could know what it was about, because that was essentially what sold papers. If you had an image that could tell a story, then you had the story below it. That really worked. But I remember, when I first left the Navy and I started the business, and then when when social media started to come, and I embraced sort of LinkedIn and Facebook, one of the big things that really took the business forward was consistency. So I remember putting posts out there with 1 or 2 likes. I remember writing LinkedIn articles and spending like an entire day and a half writing an article or something like that, to put it up there and get 0 comments and 1 like. But it's consistency getting in the news feeds and letting people see you that helps build that brand, because visibility is what grows your followers and grows your engagement, and visibility means you become more credible, and the more credible you become, the more authority you have, and then when you've got more authority, you can charge a lot more money for what you do as well. So it's definitely, consistency is a huge thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. And on consistency, because you should be posting pretty consistently, you should be sharing your work, you should show that you're working. Don't feel dragged down by the algorithms of social media as well, because they do kind of go up and down. And as a general consensus, the algorithms do change on a fairly weekly basis. You can see this in Google research in terms of how Google's algorithms change. Same with Facebook and Instagram and whatever other social media is kind of like up there in terms of popularity. Also, don't feel bogged down by that. Simply because you should be being attentive to who exactly is engaging with your posts and the quality of the engagers of your posts. Because, for example, gosh, I started posting some boudoir photos and my engagement went whoosh, not because of my engagers, but because of the algorithm
Yeah.
essentially not favoring those types of images, which I understand. And look, it's a private business. They really are kind of able to do whatever it is that they want. But I find that, yeah, it can be incredibly disappointing to see that you put in all this effort and you're not seeing a lot of return. But the thing is, you are seeing a return because it's the quality of the people that are engaging with you. I will consistently see completely different people engaging with each post. And granted, I do shoot a lot of different niches, so I do have followings approaching me from different angles.
Yeah.
But you see the quality of people engaging. You see that they're all different, which is adding to a much larger number than you can actually see in a physical number format on those platforms. And you also see the kind of industry individuals that are interacting. At least in my case, the majority of my interactions on social media tend to be record labels and music publicists and managers and the musicians themselves, and might be a smaller number because the algorithm is trying to kind of bog me down just a wee little bit, especially because I
Yeah.
don't pay for ads. Personally, in terms of boosting posts, I'll pay for ads to advertise my business, but I don't pay to boost my posts. And of course, these social media, they're businesses. They want you to pay for that.
Yeah.
That's how it is. But pay attention to who's interacting with your post and who's interacting with you, because you might find that your engagement isn't as bad as you thought it was.
Yeah, and you know, you said something really good there, because who's interacting and who's, one thing, especially with LinkedIn, when it comes to LinkedIn, is you can see on LinkedIn the views. So you might have something, you might have a post that has had 6,000, 8,000 views, but you might only have 20 comments and 30, 40 likes, but people have viewed it. And I've had so many people before message me either Facebook or LinkedIn and say, Jeff, I want to rig up a free call with you to chat about how you could help me with your business. And I've looked at this person and thought, I don't think I know you. I don't think I've ever seen you comment on anything. I'm not really familiar with your profile. Then I'll jump on a call and that person will turn around and say, wow, Jeff, it's a pleasure to speak to you. I've been watching you for ages. I know what you're all about. And I'm like, wow, I've never even actually seen you interact on anything. And they turn around and say, oh yeah, I've never really interacted, but I still watch it. They're still there behind. And I remember a couple of years ago, somebody from Canon had commented on one of my posts on LinkedIn, and I just said, and this is why, thanks for the value in the industry. And I just commented back, oh, that's fantastic. I'd love to work with you guys one day. And instantly got an email come into my inbox. Well, you found the right person. Let's talk. And the next day I was on a call with them, seeing how we could do something together and set up a webinar. So it's that, there's so much, like you were saying, within your niche, the record labels, the managers, the bands, there's so much opportunity out there, and you never know who's watching. And one of the best things to do is have yourself open and be ready for opportunity. If you see somebody looking at something, reach out, but always reach out to somebody, not from a point of, do you want to buy some photos, or can I have this, or can I have that? Always reach out from an opportunity of giving. So when I reached out to Canon, when I reach out to big businesses, I don't reach out to say, I want to get paid for working with you. I'll say, like, how much value can I bring to your followers, to your members, to your people? So there is a ridiculous amount of opportunity, and you're probably one of the best examples of opportunity, because you did put yourself out there at the very beginning everywhere, didn't you?
I did. It's, my mentality was, this is what I want to do with my life. How am I going to get there? And when you start kind of observing, how are you going to get there? You can realize there's a lot of different paths to that same goal. It's whenever I say the same thing to people who ask me, how did you get there? And I'm like, well, there's a lot of different paths to the same goal. And yes, you can follow just one path and try to get to that goal. But I followed 5 or 6 to get to that goal, because if you play the game of risk, what's more risk? Taking one chance or taking 5 chances in the
Yeah.
hopes that something actually comes through? And turns out more than one of those paths did come to fruition, which is another reason that I do photograph so many different types of genres and so many niches, because I was approaching the ultimate goal of I want to be a full-time photographer from different standpoints.
Yeah.
My career as a pet photographer was running simultaneously to my career as a music photographer, because I was pursuing completely different things at the same exact time. And much of my pursuits really was cold contacting people. It's one of those things that you just kind of had to break out of the, well, I'm going to wait for them to come to me. No, if you're not visible and if people don't know who you are, they're not going to come to you.
Mhm.
You have to reach out and find that opportunity as well, because my philosophy has been, if I don't see that opportunity, I'm going to make that opportunity. And the best way to make that opportunity, once more, is to start reaching out in contact, because you
Yeah.
honestly have no idea who's going to give you a chance. I mean, much of my music photography career is honestly owed to reaching out to a small local band that I just really, really wanted to photograph. And just, I love their music and I love the way that they looked. And I love the kind of visual content that they were creating. I was like, I want to take photos of you. And turns out they got signed to a major label pretty shortly after that. It was the same as reaching directly out to record labels, being like, I just really want to shoot this show. Let's chat about how we can do the images together. But I just really want to have a chance to be able to capture this. And I was really surprised at the amount of responses I received back, going, yeah, we'll set you up. Give you,
Yeah.
let's see what you can do.
Yeah.
You seem really passionate. Let's see what you can do. And on the topic of being passionate, if you don't get a response, my rule has always been wait about 2 weeks and send another email, and just keep doing this until you get some form of response. And if you get the response of no, don't be bummed, because on one point of that is, well, you're not in any different position than you were prior, so you didn't lose anything. And on the second
Totally.
point
Yeah.
is, you know what? They said no. I'm going to reach back out to them in like a month or two and
Yeah.
show them how I've improved in my skill and be like, is it still a no?
Yeah.
And you would be surprised how many opportunities I got that way. Maybe I was just annoying and they're like, oh my God, we'll finally give her a chance just to get her to stop emailing us. Or they looked at the work and they're like, yeah, let's see. Let's see what you can do.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
need opportunity.
I make a point, every week I call it Opportunity Wednesday,
Yeah.
and it's in my in one of my books, the journal book that I've written. It is about creating this habit of reaching out every once a week, and that's only it can be a phone call, it can be a message, it can be an email. It's reaching out to somebody who or somebody who you'd ideally love to work with, or somebody who already serves your ideal clients, where you could create a partnership with them, like a referral partnership or something like that. And I do that every week. I mean, last week alone, I got 2 webinars. I got a speaking event for Edinburgh College. So stuff comes in, and the thing is, the amount of people who say yes is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I think because not many other people do it.
Yeah.
You probably think that, everybody will be asking, but then most photographers are hanging back, because a lot of photographers have that imposter syndrome, that self-doubt. I know it's a really big thing within our industry. And even though the work's absolutely fantastic, they don't value themselves that much, and they're a little bit frightened to reach out. But as you know, if you reach out, the worst that they can say is no. And then you're still not knocked back by that. You give it a month, and then you ask them again.
Yeah. And honestly, I was the person who, when I was looking for someone to kind of mentor me in photography, I found this wonderful, wonderful woman who, instead of mentoring me in photography, because the thought process was kind of, well, you can figure that part out, she mentored me in how to be confident in what I do and how to approach people and how to not be afraid to just go out there and speak to people and kind of sell yourself. I mean, you don't have to be a used car salesman. We're not trying to talk about being that level of pushy and just trying to kind of squeeze people into giving you an opportunity, but just being kind of genuinely yourself and just going out there and be like, hey, this is what I do and this is what I want to do is incredible. I mean, I actually I started my educational journey by legitimately at trade shows and walking into businesses, just finding someone and talking to them, be like, this is what I want to do. Can you help me? Especially with the education, because that's kind of a win-win on both sides, because the camera stores, the distribution companies, and the actual camera companies themselves, the education kind of helps both sides, because education from their perspective leads to people being even more interested in the craft. Therefore, they are purchasing more product and they're being kind of more engaging and more invested in that product. And on my side, it's I want to teach. That's what I
Yeah.
love doing. I want to teach. And kind of coming together and finding that ground where both sides benefit and both sides are kind of passionate about what they do is incredible, which is why I just walked up to companies and walked up to camera stores. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. Let's find a way to make this happen. And
Totally.
but on that note, you shouldn't do that without research, because I did
Mhm.
look in and look to see whether they had someone already filling, say, the class niches that I wanted to teach. Like I wanted to teach music photography, I wanted to teach pet photography. And I would go in and I'd see if they had classes on that. And they didn't have classes on that. I was like, that is my opportunity.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think you've got to think about, like, we have so much opportunity. So like you're an educator, I'm an educator, and all the photographers that watch this, all the photographers that we reach out, they have experience in their particular niche as being a photographer, but also experience about everything within that particular industry. So if you're a wedding photographer, there's nothing stopping you approaching a wedding photography magazine and saying, I can write a piece on how to have a stress-free wedding morning, what you need to do to get into place, because you've probably been to 100 weddings and seen the same things go wrong because brides aren't prepared on a morning. You could be a pet photographer and you can write a piece for a pet blog, or you could write a piece for a pet magazine. So we have a lot of knowledge within us and experience within our industry where we can get in front of companies, brands, associations, podcasts, webinars, magazines, and use our voice to get to their followers who are potentially our ideal clients.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought up the point of like looking at what you can teach about within a genre, because genres are vast. I mean, as you said, there's so many components to it. Find that component and you're like, hey, I've had so much experience in this. Let's chat. I mean, when I
Yeah.
started doing the pet photography classes, I specifically taught on how to work with unruly animals, animals that are not trained, animals that will not sit on camera. What do you do? Because I worked with a lot of those types of animals, and I see that as being a big struggle for pet photographers, being like, well, my client's got a puppy, and as you can imagine, not all puppies are very cooperative at their very age points. And they're like, I don't know what to do. I can't do this session. This puppy's not going to sit. This puppy's not going to, listen to me. It's going to be a disaster. I'm like, hey, let's talk.
Yeah.
Figure out a way. Let me share my tips and my experience of working with animals that aren't well trained or don't really want to cooperate. And that came from my background, as I learned a lot of my pet photography by volunteering at the animal shelter and trying to create visual content for those animals to help them get adopted. And a lot of them come in all sorts of conditions. So many of them are terrified. Many of them don't want a camera anywhere near them. And I found these ways of working with animals to make them happy, to make them comfortable, and to make them kind of view photography in a different way. And I know that kind of sounds like I'm anthropomorphizing animals, but animals are so heavily driven on experience and how they feel about something that's happening to them, that if you turn something like a photo shoot, which can be incredibly scary for an animal. They don't know what you're doing. They don't understand. And so many dogs are very, very weirded out by the camera lens. It looks like it's an eyeball looking at them. But if you turn that experience for them into something that's positive, then they become much easier to work with. They enjoy a photo shoot because it has become something that's positive, that's full of treats and praise and all of that. And teaching that to people and teaching them how to change that. I even saw a shift in kind of my local community with animal shelter photography, because I was kind of encouraging all my students to go to the shelter and to photograph those animals, because a good photo, it increases their likelihood of getting adopted tenfold. And
Yeah.
you see a change, like one little class on one particular topic can cause a huge ripple in the community in the best possible way. It's incredible. So I was like, don't underestimate the little details, like you
Yeah.
mentioned about having a stress-free wedding morning.
Funny enough, one of my branding photographers who I work with, Ann Thomas, who's a personal branding photographer, what's got clients coming to her more is not just selling the photography, is selling the storytelling aspect. So she now does little training courses as well as the photography, little training courses for her clients as a bolt-on, and she's getting people signing up for them on how to actually create stories for your photography. So I think, especially down the commercial niche, also in the in like the wedding sector, and in the in every aspect of photography, we should be looking at different ways to stand out from the competitors. So if you're a commercial photographer, you can not only do the photographs, but you can also offer that every image you do is keyworded for SEO. You provide a list of hashtags for that particular recommended image content, image set. And so you don't just take amazing images, you help the companies get more visible. You help the companies get seen, because if the end user is getting lots of engagement, they're getting lots of comments, they're getting lots of click through on their images, they're going to be more than happy to use you again, because it's actually solved a problem for them.
Yes, cross promotion is huge. I mean, it's honestly, I even cross promote with personal clients because I have so many people who come to me. They're like, I just want a portrait session. Just for myself. I want some pretty pictures for me. I want some pretty pictures I can put up on Facebook. Maybe I want some photos on a dating app or something of the sort. And even through that, I asked them, I was like, so what do you do? Like, who are you as a person? What is your story here? What is your life? Because the awesome thing about being a photographer is that we do get to meet so many different types of people, and we get to meet people from all walks of life, all sorts of careers. Like, it's incredible. It's an amazing opportunity to kind of learn more about yourself as you're learning about someone else, and just kind of step into someone else's world and see things a little bit differently. But the reason I brought that up is even for the personal portrait clients, when I post them on my social media and I kind of share those shoots, I tell them, hey, this is what my client does, and it's pretty darn cool. And here's her website. You should go check that out, because you have no idea who might be looking at those images. I've had clients who say they make custom dog collars for a living, or they're a dancer, or they're a singer. And I know I work in music, but sometimes I do just personal portraits for people. I'm like, oh, I sing in choirs, and you share that information. And I've had clients get back to me and they tell me, wow, one of your followers reached out to me and gave me this amazing job opportunity because they clicked on my website because of the photos that you took, and they saw what I can do, and they offered me a job because turns out I was someone they were looking for. And again, that cross promotion is incredible. And it works the other way around too. I mean, when I have clients, of course, posting about who took the photos, or they're talking about their experience with me, and I get more clients. I think all industries are very big on referral. It's a referral system as well. So if you can do referral systems both ways, it's just beneficial for everyone and continues to kind of foster and build that community. And you should have a good relationship with your clients. I love being friends with my clients. Like,
I think that's it. Like in every particular niche, your clients have similar people to them who they know, and great ways to have a referral system where they can give a voucher to their friends, which will give them off a little bit of money off, or a discounted first shoot. But the client earns rewards to use against their next shoot that they can get. So you tend to find brides know lots of other girls who are currently getting married. People with kids know other people with kids of the same age. So there's a lot of money left on the table by not having that referral system. And also, one of the big things I used to do with the dog photography, we used to have a commission-based system with dog groomers. So people who were going in and getting their dogs groomed. Some people were actually going in twice a month to get the dogs groomed at 50 pounds a time. So that's a lot of money they're spending on their dog looking great. These people really love the dog, they care about them, they're spending money on the dog. And if you pick a high-end groomers, or groomers that fit your client base, then that's a brilliant way to have a referral system. And then the groomer gets a commission back on the actual sale afterwards. So if they come in, they spend a lot of money on product. And when I used to go into groomers and say, there's your cash for this month, we're like, wow, Jeff, and they would just, because for them it was passive income, it was extra income coming in, and all they had to do was say, Jeff's absolutely amazing, get your dog photograph there. And the other good thing was actually most people who came along for the shoot had actually just been to the groomers, so they got the voucher, and then the next time they were back, they booked the portrait session, and then they booked a dog grooming session just before the portrait session, so the dog looked absolutely immaculate for the shoot. So it worked fantastic.
That's brilliant. Yet I push on that so much. I was like, reach out to local businesses. I also do, in addition to that, I also do like mini photo shoot sessions, sometimes on a particular, say, Saturday or Sunday at a local dog boutique or a groomer salon, because I have a little studio set up. I can set up there. And not only does that give you brand visibility as well, because now that company is advertising, you're advertising, you're getting new people into their business, they're getting new people into your business, and it's kind of a win-win for all. But a mini session, to me, which I suppose is a very contentious word in the photography industry, whether mini sessions are a good thing or not. For me, I look at a mini session as, this is an opportunity for a potential client to get to know me for 10 minutes, see how I work, and then be kind of enticed to do a full session, because I have about 75 to 80% turnover rate on mini sessions turning into full-fledged photo shoots, because you're just giving them like a little snippet, and along with that little snippet, they get to know who you are as a photographer. And that's also another way for you to kind of portray your brand, because the way that you speak to people, as we mentioned, going back to words, the way that you speak to people and the way that you present yourself is a part of your brand, because people will remember your presentation as much as they will remember your business name or your website. So giving them that opportunity to get to know you for a few moments is incredible. And then you yourself could figure out, do I want to continue working with this person? Is this my ideal client or not? So it does kind of work both ways. And maybe if you pair mini sessions with that set of mind.
And I think, mini sessions, what I always say to clients is, utilize mini sessions. I think they're really, really good. And I think, but you're in control of the mini session. So you have a mini session that is, we're only doing 5 this month. So you can switch your mini session on and off when you need it. So if you're really busy with full-time clients, full paying clients coming in the studio, then you don't need to do mini sessions. Another thing is like free shoots. Now, there's a lot of people, you should never do anything for free. And I say, well, I don't like it when people say, what was it like? You get magazines phoning you or something, or you get these agencies saying, will you do this shoot? We're not going to be able to pay you, but it'd be great publicity. If I'm going to do when I was setting up the commercial business and we started to get into hospitality and food, and also likewise with construction, we decided to do free shoots, but on our terms, and we never offered them as free shoots. So what we did is we thought, right, we want to get into hospitality. Who's going to be recognized by lots of people in hospitality? The Marriott, because everybody knows the Marriott. So there was a Marriott hotel not far from us. So we went into the Marriott hotel and says, look, guys, we're branching out into the hospitality and hotel industry. We've been commercial photographers for years. And what we'd like to do, we need some new updated stuff for our website and for our brochures. We'd like to offer you the option of an entire shoot worth £1,500. But on this occasion, we're going to completely waiver the cost on the basis that we can use these images in our own promotion and you can use them as you see fit. The manager nearly took our hands off. Now, the power of those images, because what we did is when we took those images, we made sure we got loads of Marriott branding in there. So, if we're doing a shot of the restaurant, we'd get down low and get the menu in with the logo in. If we're doing a photograph of reception, get it with the Marriott sign behind and the girl with the Marriott badge on. So that was all company branded. That had so much more power than if we'd gone and done a free shoot for Joe's Calf, which nobody else has heard of. So when we approached Best Western or we approached Hilton, they looked at the brochures and thought, oh, wow, they've been working for Marriott. They didn't know we'd done the shoot for free. It doesn't matter, So I believe in, do a free shoot on your terms. Never say it's free. Tell them the value of how much it is, and make sure if you're going to do something, you're waiving the cost, that you're going to get something back from it. It's a really good brand that's going to boost your brand. They have a good social media following. It's going to help raise your premium profile. But don't be drawn into stuff where people say, just do it. You'll get really good visibility. Do it on your terms.
100%. That's why it's kind of like, it's the bringing up the contentious subject of collaborations. It has to be mutually beneficial in a true sense of that term. Like it has to be on your terms because it has to be something that's beneficial for you, because there's no reason to put your years of experience and your time and your effort and the wear on your equipment if it's not going to be leading you to where you need to go.
Yeah.
So, and I have the same thing. I was like, you know what? Free shoots. Yes, it's like the biggest trigger word in the art industry. And I understand. It's because photographers get approached by so many, essentially, sorry to be crass, nobodies who are trying to convince you to do work hours and hours and hours and put a lot of wear into your equipment on their behalf because they do not want to pay for it because they don't see the value of it, which is what causes the contentious issue. But if you are approaching someone for the benefit of your brand and to be able to expand into a territory you have not been in before, it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the most difficult thing to kind of explain and show people, is that there is such a big difference between, say, a model call type of shoot, which is what I would kind of consider this without actually having to call that model. You walked in there, but it was essentially a model call for portfolio building or resume building.
Yeah.
And plus the recommendation you can get, say, off of the Marriott, because now it's a very, very established brand that has worked with you personally, and they have seen your professionalism and they have seen how you work, and they're able to vouch for you, is also a huge thing.
Yeah.
Especially
funny enough, I had a client in where was it? Was it Perth in Australian John Rice, who's a hotel photographer, you know, and he took that approach I recommended because he was going into that niche, and I recommended he get some really good images of a recognizable brand. So he approached the Jamie Oliver restaurant, his local Jamie Oliver restaurant. Everybody knows Jamie Oliver within the food industry. And so he did a shoot and waived the fee. The images were used throughout their website and in their social media. The actual free shoot itself got John 2 jobs anyway. And he had some great brochures and images for his website. But 3 weeks later, the city next to John's city was opening a new Jamie Oliver restaurant. And Jamie Oliver himself had seen John's images, contacted the manager of the restaurant and says, can we get the guy who did the Perth photographs out to do the shoot as a paid job? So he actually went back, did the paid shoot for this other restaurant. It got pictures of him and Jamie together, giving a thumbs up and stuff like that. I mean, all of that came from the original shoot, the PR, the publicity, a paid shoot from Jamie Oliver's restaurant, plus the other jobs that he got in on the back of those from other companies. And obviously it elevates his brand because Jamie Oliver is an internationally recognized brand.
Definitely. And kind of, as photographers, we also shouldn't be so pigeonholed into our own industry that we no longer take example from other industries, because at the end of the day, business is business.
Yeah.
It's the same across any industry. So I very oftentimes look at the way other industries are doing things and taking example from that, being like, wow, that's really successful for them. I mean, think the concept of, actually funny, of what we're describing is almost a concept of influencing, you know, the brands who will hire influencers in order to kind of gain their own visibility, because people are going to see those influencers. That influencer usually has a following of a demographic that is worthwhile for this company, and offering them, say, a free product, or an offered product in order for them to post about it and get all of their following, kind of looking at this new brand, is huge. And the other industries have been using it for years and years and years and years. And it's kind of, you look at photography and you're like, you can't be set behind. You got to watch what other industries are doing.
Yeah.
And of course, influencing, another kind of like trigger word in the in any sort of creative industry. It's kind of like, but the influencers, but they have such a power. I mean, I used to do marketing for some of the bands that I was photographing, because I have a marketing degree. It was kind of always my fallback plan on top of educating myself on how to push my own business. But there were times where it was like, I'm still building my photography brand, still bringing my photography, didn't have a lot of business, but I have marketing skills. So I'm going to start marketing for bands. And it was incredible how powerful what I would consider micro influencers were. Might not have a large following, but have the right dedicated following. And it grew these bands like crazy.
It's like, funny enough, I spoke to a few big industry. I remember speaking to Panasonic last year and talking to one of the guys from Panasonic, and he was saying to me, he says, Jeff, we've changed our budget completely on when it comes to marketing. He says, we're pretty much doing away with magazine advertising. We're reducing the number of in-person shows that we're doing, and we're putting money into influencer marketing, because it's easy for us to say our kit's great or something like that. He says, but if somebody else says it's great,
oh yeah,
so if you have a following and then you recommend a particular product or a service or something like that, that is so powerful. So, a lot of brands are looking for people to align themselves with, or they're looking for content. They're looking for, they're looking to use your following, your knowledge, like I say, approaching blogs, approaching magazines, all this sort of stuff helps. It all adds, and it adds to your visibility, which adds to your credibility.
Oh, 100%. And just think about, I think the best way to look at marketing, probably the best thing I ever took away from years going to marketing classes and whatnot, is think of your own self as a consumer. Like, what are your own habits? What are your own ways of finding companies you want to work with? Say, for example, tattoo artistry. Are you more likely to go to a tattoo artist that your friend has already been to, that has already had that needle hit their skin and have ink put into it, than you are Googling tattoo artists in my city?
Yeah.
You want that personal referral. You want that personal recommendation, because that influencer has created a brand of trust. I mean, what all of this is, and the people who read specific magazines and have subscriptions to them, there is a level of trust and confidence in that. Nobody, including ourselves, wants a company to approach them, be like, buy this, hire us. You're looking at them, you're like, whoa, who are you? I've never used you before. I mean, if you're a company approaching me, then I feel like your incentive is solely to get my business, whether you're good at it or not. But when your friend comes over to you and goes, hey, I use this amazing photographer, and I know you've been talking about this photo shoot that you want to do, and this photographer was great, and you should totally check them out. Or you go on social media and influencers going, I had the best time with this photographer, and all their followers who have already established a level of trust on this influencer sees that. They're like, hey, you know what? This person that we know, or we follow, or we feel like we have a personal connection with, has used this individual. We need to use them too.
Yeah.
It's like almost an indirect way of putting yourself in their face, because in a way it's kind of like, you are in their face. You're just not the one saying it.
Totally. And one more thing just before we finish is, which is a completely different direction from talking about brands and about influence. Obviously, you're a brand ambassador for Sigma, and there's some exciting new developments on the new range of lenses that they've produced, isn't it?
Yes, Sigma has an incredible new line of lenses called the Sigma I series. They are exclusively for mirrorless systems, but they are these tiny, tiny little packages that are incredibly powerful, that are incredibly lightweight, that make life so much easier. Because take it from someone who has been carrying incredibly heavy equipment for over 12 years, and at the age of 28 is suffering from back problems.
Oh, no.
As a result of carrying incredibly heavy equipment. These new lines of lenses are phenomenal. They're incredibly sharp, but the thing about them is that they're so incredibly lightweight that whenever I go do a shoot, and I'm not trying to push this as like some sort of advertisement that we were just talking about, like, hey, I'm in your face. But because they are so small, and because they are so lightweight and so easy, I genuinely do throw them in my bag, in the sense that whether I need to use them or not, it's a good thing to have them, because I think as many photographers, if we do a lot of shoots, we always have backup lenses. We always have extra gear because we don't know necessarily what we're walking into. These lenses are incredible to just throw in there, because I don't know what I'm going to walk into necessarily. Yeah. They have a 28 to 70 millimeter lens. I know it's not a 24 to 70, but it is so tiny and so lightweight in comparison that it's kind of a, what do you lose by throwing that in there?
Yeah.
Same with, they have a 35, they have a 60, they have a 45, and they're just amazing to just boop. I mean, they're so tiny. I honestly just put them in my purse. I don't know, but it also.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Having that backup kit. I remember years ago, one of my, it was actually a competitor, but a friend. he'd bought a new Canon camera. He'd spent an absolute fortune buying this new Canon camera. He sold his other one in order to get it. And then I said, so where's your backup? I was like, I haven't got one, but I've got this amazing new camera. And I was like, oh my God. I said, I wouldn't dare go to a wedding without at least 2 cameras, two or 3 flash guns, duplicates of lenses, even if I leave them in the boot of the car, with the bodies loaded up, ready to go. Because, and funny enough, I probably had, I think in my career, maybe 4 or 5 occasions where it just stopped. Just, you took the batteries in, put them out. Yeah, it's not the batteries, but it's just nothing's happening, but because you were prepared and you had a backup, it wasn't a problem. Just put it down and pick up another one.
And honestly, when you start switching to essentially smaller but very powerful equipment, it kind of changes the way that you shoot too. Because what I love offering my clients, even if it's a commercial session, sometimes I'll kind of like squeeze them and convince them into doing this with me, is I call them kind of these spontaneous adventure sessions. We meet at a mutual point and then we just walk and we see what we can find. And we create an entire experience of just, what can we find? Let's explore. Let's find something cool. Let's find something different. And it also allows your clients to have something that is so incredibly exclusively there, because half the time those locations that I use, I can't find them again. I don't remember where we went.
Yeah. And you wouldn't want to be carrying all that kit if it wasn't lightweight, would it?
No. And focal length like a 35 millimeter is such a classic for a reason, that it is incredibly versatile, and being able to throw that in the bag. And then the 60 millimeter is really beautiful for portraits. It still has that really nice optic compression without necessarily being a telephoto lens. You don't have to be that far back for it. For example, like an 85 millimeter, which is kind of the quintessential portrait lens, isn't it?
Yeah.
But 60 millimeter, it was kind of like the underrated focal length, as I called it. It was so. Having smaller gear, having gear that it makes you a lot more maneuverable, makes you a lot more able to travel for essentially longer distances, longer times, can also change the way that you shoot.
Yeah, and especially for you when you're on the road quite a bit, moving from state to state and carrying a load of kit, it's gonna make your life a lot easier.
Most definitely, especially when I tour, because there is not a lot of room to pack a lot of things. I am trying to kind of make as much of a compact kit as possible. And oh gosh, the amount of us that fly, getting on a plane with suitcases of gear, talk about an absolute nightmare. I think I get more stressed having to just walk through security with equipment than anything else. Yeah. They could lose my bag with my clothes. They could lose the bag with the makeup. I don't care about that. But your gear. So I always try to pack as much compact gear that I can kind of hold close to my chest in a personal item and not have to give it to anybody.
Brilliant. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's really, really, really nice to have you on again and talk about the ways to increase your visibility and build your brand. So how can people connect with you if they haven't seen you before?
Easiest way to find me is to hop on the good old Google and just type in Anabel Deflux and everything of mine pops up.
Yeah, and I noticed you're really easily Googleable because you've got such a unique name. There mustn't be many defluxes about, is there?
No, because it is not my legal last name. It's another thing. I'm like, having an artist name is cool.
Yeah,
take a page out of musician books. Have an artist name.
That's brilliant. That's a great tip. Well, Anabel, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you very much for your time. And hope to speak to you again soon.
Definitely, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Brilliant. And sorry about the mix-up with the timing at the very beginning there.
No worries.
Thanks again. Take care, guys.